2010 back in 2017 of stepping into the mystery and going, okay, everything that has been, everything that has come into my life, how is this going to now translate moving forward? I mean, some of the key elements that I am aware of that is clear for me, co-creation is really important. Circular leadership, is important. Working with others in a way where each person is seen as a sovereign, capable, magnificent individual, and working together more on a horizontal plane of existence rather than it being vertical, and people taking responsibility with whatever aspect of the creation they're going to work on, and then coming back and then piecing it together and weaving it together and then looking at the next reiteration. Being in team, in an organization, working with others for a vision or a collective directive that is just beyond myself feels quite strong at the moment. So
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always a blessing to be with you again. I have the gorgeous Nicolas Perrin on the show today. You've actually been on the show once before, but it was a long time ago when we were on radio. I didn't realize how long it was. It was like 8 years ago. Anyway,
it was
welcome.
Ages.
Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Nicolas also joined us a few weeks ago in the Inner Sanctum to go over some energy healing work that we both did. Oh gosh, about a while ago, about 8 years ago, we went down to Melbourne and did an energy healing course, and I've been chatting about it, what we can do with my online tribe in the Inner Sanctum. And I said to them, would you like Nick to come? Because I did one of your workshops in Sydney. You were going over some principles with another couple of gorgeous goddesses. And I so enjoyed it. I was talking about it to my tribe and I said, would you like Nick to come and talk to you about it? And they all said, yes, we had such a great time. Thank you so much.
It was beautiful.
But let me tell people that don't know about Nick what Nicolas is up to. For many years, Nicolas lived a 9-to-5 life working in the corporate world. He left this way of living around 10 years ago, choosing to live a more heart-centered life. During this time, he noticed many people were living a life that was not true for them, making choices based on expectation of others. He says, moving out of survival mentality to a thriving state of mind is the first step to embracing our gifts, talents, and to move in the direction of our soul's desires. Nicolas has been on his own inner awakening journey for 14 years and shares his gifts with others. He's committed to inspiring at least 10 million people globally to be visionary, awakened leaders living on purpose and creating extraordinary lives for themselves and awake communities. Over the past 3 years, Nicolas has been living around the world, visiting sacred sites and going to international New Earth paradigm communities, earth grids and light work, and living in a 5D flow reality. Today, Nicolas is a guide who supports difference makers to catalyze their most potent dormant gifts. He supports his clients in transitioning from the pain of playing small and confused about their life direction to step into a new reality, one which reflects their soul's destiny and legacy. He helps you see a magnetic vision, activating your divine soul blueprint, enabling you to make the highest difference in this world. Nicolas believes in a holistic approach and shares and teaches about new paradigms, intuition, meditation, energetic transmissions, somatic body transformations, soul-driven leadership, and thriving mindset. Nicolas believes that our circumstances do not matter, only our state of being matters. Choosing to be empowered and courageous are the foundations to living a free, sovereign, and fulfilling life. And he's one of our speakers in the upcoming Higher Self Expo, where we're talking about where science meets spirituality. And the topic of your talk is the alchemy of quantum higher self alignment, which sounds pretty exciting.
It's exciting.
Yeah. You say here that you're going to take us on a journey as we explore how we can align more effectively to our higher self through the art of alchemy and quantum science. You will share how we can use and connect with the morphic field of resonance, which directly affects our human experience. Learn and experience how to use symbols that act as keys to individual doors that exists within the quantum field. There's the cat.
Yeah.
The cat's up for this. This will be a practical experience of integrating quantum science into your everyday human experience, expanding our consciousness and the possibilities that we are available to in everyday life. Well, that sounds very exciting. Very exciting indeed. But let's go over your story a little bit. What happened to you when you were working in what did you want to be when you left school? What did you think your life was all about? Like climbing the corporate ladder, making money, buying the house, getting the mortgage?
Not really, although at the time of when I left school, went to uni, I did a double degree doing business, and that was really kind of motivated through my grandfather, who was an entrepreneur and had done really, really well back in South Africa. His parents were Italian migrants that had left Italy after World War II, migrated to South Africa, and of course, sort of post World War II era was, a massive opportunities all around the world, particularly in countries like South Africa and South America, and even in Australia and New Zealand as well. And a lot of people from Europe were like, I want to get out of here and start a new life. And, my grandparents did the same. Yeah. So they set up a very successful pasta and ice cream cone factory and all those Italian products back in South Africa. And that entrepreneurial, I don't know, the idea of making something out of nothing was something that did resonate for me. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing to create, just to be a creator. And the only thing at the time that I was aware of was the business world. That was the only thing that drew me. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go into that direction. So while I was at uni, I started to work in a call center for a share registry. So dealing with all the investor inquiries that came through for all the listed companies on the stock exchange, angry people, happy people, confused people, people that were just bored, old people that had no one to talk to, and everything in between. It was interesting, just dealing with all these different inquiries and peoples and agendas, and was working in that world. Did project management after working in the call registry or call center, and learning about project management, how to put through different takeovers, capital raisings, rights issues, all of that kind of stuff on behalf of our client, who was the company. And then moved to JP Morgan, again, kind of working in the custody part of the business, which is really looking after the assets on behalf of high net worth individuals, or in this case, governments, actually, like the Bank of Norway and the government of Chile, and huge clients. And it was in JP Morgan that the shift started to really unfold for me. So I started to really question, what was I doing and what were people here doing? Why were people doing what they were doing? And I remember asking actually one of the really senior, really top executives in the company, going, why do you do what you do? Why are you here? Like, is there a reason? And he just basically said, it's just a life choice. If you want to live this way, if you want to live in this world, then that's what you choose, and you sacrifice certain things and you allow other things in. And some of the clients, one of the clients I'd worked for was Credit Suisse and Macquarie Bank at the time. And what I noticed with all these people was they basically all sort of said the same thing. You choose a certain lifestyle, you choose a way of living, and basically your work life, your personal life, your lifestyle becomes one thing. Like, people used to hang out on the weekends, they used to go on yachting adventures, you would hang out with different couples within the organization. So it just became your reality. And I questioned that. I went, well, is that kind of what life's about for me? And is that what I want to be doing? Noticing that so many people, were often sending emails at 1 a.m, 2 a.m. And I was just like, I just don't think that's my world. There isn't anything in what I've seen that really drives me forward. And in 2010, my intuition had sort of sent a very strong message through, which was basically like, you're going to be leaving the corporate world. This isn't where you're meant to be right now. And at the time, I just had no real sense of what my life was going to look like. I'd been on the self-transformational journey for about 4 years up to that point, just doing my own healing work, my own transformation. I'd dived into Reiki healing and all sorts of other things, but it was really just for myself. It was just my own personal journey, and I had no sense or direction of it translating into being a healer or a coach or a guide or anything like that. And even in 2010, when my intuition spoke to me, it was super unclear. Like, it was just, you're going to be leaving. But I was like, okay, and what am I leaving into? And it was just this deafening silence, right? Of, I don't know, you'll have to wait and see. It was challenging. It was challenging to be in that space, because it was the first time where I think I was invited into the great mystery of not knowing. And then kind of about five months after, when that first intuitive impulse came, my mother passed away from cancer, which wasn't a sudden experience, because she had been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2007. So it was a journey. But in 2010, her condition rapidly deteriorated. Like, it was like, okay, like I could see the life force energy in her spirit and her being and her soul kind of slowly leaving her body, and yeah, realizing that she was on the out. And in July that year, she passed over. And I had some amazing experiences through that. You know, like, I'd done a Reiki energy healing session on her about 2 days before she passed over. And it was super interesting, because her body was twitching and all these weird things were happening. And I didn't really know what was going on. But when I spoke with the channel about a couple of months later, she said, oh, you were helping her release the attachments of the body and preparing and supporting her to actually transition. So that was actually a really beautiful experience. And the first time that I really encountered death, which in a sense, that whole year was a year of deathing for me, because I was letting go of my job. My mother passed over, a significant relationship that I was in was releasing. A lot of friendship circles were releasing. I significantly injured my right knee. So it was just like a real deconstruction. It was intense. And then what happened was, I went to a retreat 3 months after the passing of my mother, to really kind of allow the grief and allow that process to do what it needed to do. And in that journey, I was connecting with people and just honestly sharing, like, I'm not really sure what my life's about. I'm not really sure where I'm at. All I know is I'm not meant to be in the corporate world. And that's, and I'm getting a sense and a feeling that I'm meant to be working with people. It could be client relationship, it might be sales, it might be something in that space, but that's as much as I've got. And through being at that retreat, there was a synchronicity that unfolded, where the person who was holding it, Amir Zogi, who ran at the time Be Free events, then sort of invited me to a conversation at the end of that year, saying, look, come to my house. I'd love to hear more about you. I'd love to hear more about what you're up to, what you can do, what you're motivated to do. And at the end of that conversation, he offered me a position on the team and said, look, I really feel that what you have learned in the corporate space and just your abilities and skills could really help what I'm trying to do. Because he was a visionary, amazing visionary, got amazing ideas, but the implementation or the grounding in of those ideas isn't always necessarily a visionary's best skill set. So I help with that. And it was awesome, because what the transition point for me was, having been in such a controlled, rigid environment, very mental, very controlled, and then going into the opposite. It was all about following your feeling, going with the intuitive impulse, following your heart. It was the opposite experience, but then I still got to support him and going, how can we bring this message to the world in a way that can land for people? So running events and doing all the kind of back end stuff. So it was all perfect, which at the time I couldn't see, obviously. And isn't that the truth, right? About the unfolding realities that we move into. Often we can't see how these pieces all come together. And looking back on it, it was such an important part of my life and in my journey, and so many skills that I learned that I didn't know about, that later on, when I started to guide others people into, on their own journeys and paths through the Lionheart coaching path. All of those skills that I had learned in his business, in his creation, I was able to effortlessly use in my own practice, which obviously at the time I had no idea about.
Yeah, I want to go back to your mother's transition, because we had a meeting, what's today? Night before last, for the Vision Keepers and Heather. And so Nicolas is one of the Vision Keepers, which is a group we have. It's the conscious leaders of Sydney or Australia sort of supporting each other. And we were talking about transition. She sort of themes each meeting, and transition was the theme of, and we're in that transitionary time. Like, you were supporting your mother's transition, and you're talking about your transition from the corporate mindset, the corporate world, going into the mindset of living in service to the creator, as a human being, in service to the creator, and what that entails. And that entails like totally surrendering and living in the mystery, which is really scary for so many people, because we want plans, we want goals to move into and plans. And sometimes you just got to let go and be in the mystery and let the universe sort out those details, and just be up for saying yes to whatever comes. Like, what was his name? Amir Shogi?
Amir Zogi, was the name of the speaker.
Yeah, which is scary for so many people. I think that's why they stay in that sort of corporate mindset where everything is planned, and you've got that paycheck at the end of the week. There's no mystery there. You know what's going on. Do you want to say something about that, like moving from the I know to the I don't know, and being comfortable inside the I don't know?
Yeah. And look, it does connect in with what I'm wanting to share with the highest self Expo. It's like when I was really tuning into the question of what is the most important thing that I could support, but just that people could know about, that would just radically transform how we live our lives and how society lives their lives. And to me, it's that higher self connection. It's remembering that we're more than just this human body. We're more than the personality, and how we perceive reality through the 5 human senses is just a very limited or small spectrum of what's really going on. And so the question is, like, how can I open myself up and be receptive to more of what's actually going on, really? And to then start to create my own language and my own way of navigating that, because it is a little bit different for everyone. Like, how I receive insights and messages and directives is different to other people. And there are some common key kind of themes that we can be aware of, but it's really about self-mastery and becoming familiar with how it works for me. And so that's been a large part of the work that I've done, because I really feel that once someone's higher self is really kind of activated and their own heart intelligence is open, they've moved beyond kind of the egoic left brain way of orientating life, being very logical, very rational, or needing to justify or understand or conceptualize everything in how we've always known it, and move beyond that into well, how can I actually get answers to realities that I don't even know exist? Like, how do I open myself up into more of the void, the unmanifested realms of reality, and be a participant in that? And I think so many problems in life become solved through that, and the recognition that I'm just one part of this incredible unfoldment, and seeing other people as part of that mystery. They've got certain pieces of the puzzle, I've got certain pieces of the puzzle, and then the co-creation and the working together, and instead of seeing life as I'm the separate individual competing and trying to make life happen and be this, successful and be seen as someone or something, it then rather becomes more about, I just want to play the part that I was destined to play. Like, it's like the acorn, when you look at a beautiful acorn, it's just the blueprint of the acorn is to be this incredible oak tree.
Right.
And so it doesn't want to be more. It doesn't want to be anything different. It doesn't want to be anything less. It doesn't want to be anything more. It's just allow me to manifest and step into the magnificence of the oak tree.
Yeah.
And it's really that. It's really, then there's no need to become something more than what I am. There's also no need to diminish myself or hide away or feel any sense of inadequacy or inferiority. It's just, how do I be all of who I am? And I really feel that is, for me, the most important, single alignment or teaching or directive at this time.
Yeah, it's you say many times, in your bio, your soul's plan, stepping into your soul's desires and your soul's plan, because we do have a plan before we come, and then we have the free will to totally not listen to that and do what we think we should do. Like, okay, I've come here to change the world. No, I want to have money and go on holidays. Well, you could do both, but yeah, listening to that soul plan. But there's this juxtaposition that, listening to, there is a plan, but you still have this, you still have to make decisions. Like, you still got to make decisions. I get this a lot with my clients. I know that I'm here to make a difference, but I don't know what. Like that, you were saying, making choices based on the expectation of others, and what did you say here? Being in that I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. Like, that's a question I get from so many of my clients, that know that they're here to make a difference, but they just don't know how that looks or what that looks like. And then we have to unravel that, like, what's calling you? What are you passionate about? What do you want to think about? Where do you put your focus that really feels good? Like Bashar says, follow your highest excitement. And inside all of that, there's still decisions to be made. So it's a confusing time, but confusion and then letting go of the confusion, like that. Can I just relax and let it unfold? Make some decisions, then let go. Make some decisions, then let go. I don't know. I've done it so many. I've been doing it for so many years. I'm a bit of an expert at it, actually. Being in the I don't know. What is it? Deepak Chopra said, the wisdom of uncertainty. When we've got our life all planned out, because we're the creator of our reality, then there's no wiggle room for something extraordinary, for something different than what we think to happen. But when we let go and live in the wisdom of uncertainty, then infinite possibility is available, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it is a bit of a paradox, because it's like there is like both of these ideas of a destiny or a blueprint or some kind of overarching direction is there, and yet there is also the free will or having to make choices and decisions. And I feel like that's partly the alignment or the coming together of the character, the personality, the egoic aspect, and the higher self and the soul, and the working together of those elements. Because the human side of us kind of often does go for security, predictability, comfort, belonging, what I can hold on to. And then the more expanded aspect, or the elements beyond time and space, is going for change, evolution, growth, new experiences. It really doesn't actually care necessarily about success or failure. It's more about the experience. Like, let's go through the experience. Like, what happens? What do I learn from it?
Exactly.
What can come into my reality now as a result of that unfolding? And so there isn't any of those judgments of seeing it as, oh, that was really good, that was really bad, that was terrible, I hated that, and it's more the marinating of those two, and the unification of the human aspects, and to the best of our ability, just being able to experience things as they are without kind of putting a story on top of it. It's a challenge.
I know, as humans, we get so caught up in the success principle, and there's so many motivational coaches out there, or law of attraction coaches out there, that are all teaching us how to be successful. And when we're not successful, we're beating up on ourselves. I don't think success is the meaning to life, really.
No.
I
don't either. I think it's more about, how can I be all of who I am and express that and just be me. my authentic true self. And sometimes, there's a lot of things like being successful is often just the really small things in the background, often things that people might not even notice or might not even recognize. And that could actually be the most successful way of expressing or being in the world. It's not necessarily, everyone recognizing this incredibly huge project or vision or thing that manifests. And it's funny, even when you were sharing part of my bio, inspiring 10 million people, that was something that dropped in about 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm in a very different place to where I was then, and now it's kind of like, it doesn't actually really matter on the number, really. It's more of allowing those ripples to radiate out into the world and allow others to do what they need to do. And if I can catalyze and support someone to align more to who they truly are, then that's success for me.
I don't think we'll ever truly know what the impact of our life has been until we transition and have a near death experience and do a life review. Will we really see the overarching effect of those ripple effects? Like when you say you want to inspire 10 million people, I don't think you'll ever really know. One of the most profound stories that I've remembered from many people on the show was Howard Storm had an NDE, I don't know, probably about 40, 50 years ago. He's been sharing it for years on Oprah and Donahue and everything. He still shares it. He became a minister afterwards, but he was an artist and an art teacher, and he'd taken a group of students to Paris to learn art, and he'd had art exhibitions, and he'd been awarded accolades for his art, and he was climbing up that successful ladder and feeling very proud of himself and very like, I'm fantastic. And he died, and during his review he was looking through all the things that happened in his life, and when he was given this award for his art, he was chatting with Jesus. That's why I became a minister. Jesus said, "Not important." And he said, what, but, like, I was given this award for being such a great artist. Jesus said, "Not important. That's not what I want you to look at." Obviously, the review was for him to come back into this life. So it wasn't the same as a review when you're not going to come back into a life. And then he said to Jesus, "Well, if that's not important, like all my success in life is not important, what is important?" And he took him to a time where he's in his office and a student had come in, and he'd been broken up from his girlfriend. He'd been dumped, and he was really heartbroken. And he'd wanted his beloved art teacher to give him some compassion and solace. And at the time, Howard was busy and thinking, "Oh, what does this kid want? He's here, he's like annoying me. I wish he'd get out of my office." And he was just really curt with him and just sort of dismissed him. And he said, "That was a really important part of your life. You had an opportunity there to help someone who needed your help, and you dismissed it." And Howard's like, "Oh my God."
Right. Like,
we can forget that is success. Makes me want to cry.
Yeah, no, that's a touching moment. And I think some of those near-death experiences when, people come back, it's funny, I've just been doing a little bit of diving into all of that. It's often, it's like the universe going, if we don't need to intervene here and pull this person aside and just give them a bit of a recheck, the current path they're going down is just a bit off to what they came here to do. So it's almost just a bit of like a recheck, regroup, reset, and get back in there again. But it's so true. I think, again, a lot of the ideals and what people think life is about.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily always aligning to how we can be of service, and often in small moments like that, to potentially really support someone who's going through a crisis or going through a really difficult moment and really needed a little bit of guidance and support and love and care.
Exactly. Now, in the same vein, a few years ago, you threw everything up in the air and you said, "Right, I don't know, I'm going to explore the world more." So you set off on a journey to explore the world and you're away for about 3 years. And you went to some amazing places and did some amazing things. I'd love to get into what you did. You went to sacred sites. Like, where did you go? What did you do? What did you learn?
Yeah. So again, talking about transitions and mystery, it's like in 2017, I had gone to a retreat, it was like a global visionary leaders retreat in the US Virgin Islands. It took me forever to get there. It was like 40 hours worth of flights. It was so difficult from Australia to get there. It was like 3 or 4 flights. And I knew that when I signed up for that conference, I knew it wasn't really about the materials so much, but it was more about the connections and just more about who I was going to connect with and meet. And it turned out to be true, actually. There were some amazing people that I met there, and I'm still really good friends with them, and we still support each other. But what happened is when I got back to Australia, I had this 1 month where everything was flowing, everything was working, and I had all these visions and ideas of where, I wanted to take my work and what I thought the rest of 2017 was going to be all about. And then it was literally like someone turned the lights off and everything just stopped working. And I was like, okay, what's going on? But luckily, I'd had enough experience up to that point to go, don't resist it. It's, just trust this process, even though it's, I'm in this kind of unknown, life is kind of grinding to a screeching halt, just be with that. And 2 months passed by where there was just nothing was happening. And, people even had inquired, said, look, are you doing any group journeys? Are you doing anything? I said, look, just hold off for the moment because I feel something big's going to happen. I don't know what it is yet. And it was at the end of April and it was an late autumn afternoon. And I was just before my yoga class. And I remember really sort of wholeheartedly, really desiring some clarity from the universe. I was like, right, what is it that I'm not seeing? Because something's going on, but I'm obviously not aware of what is going on. And this message just came into my being. It was so strong and it was so crystal clear. It was just like, you need to leave Sydney. You need to give up everything. You need to let everything go. And you need to go on this awakened, indefinite pilgrimage overseas. And so I packed up my life, and in 2 weeks' time, I was on a plane. Middle of May, I think it was like the 17th of May. I was on a plane, and that it was like going onto a totally different timeline. It was super extraordinary. Like I was just like, wow, that is incredible. Like I had all these ideas, all these visions, all the sense of what I thought my life was going to be about for the next year or two. And I'm doing something completely different. Like, okay, let's go with this. So to answer your question, like, what did I do? The impulse, the evolutionary impulse, or I call it like my soul's desire, was to go to different intentional communities. So I visited Bindhorn, I visited Damanhur, I visited Tamira, some of the big ones in Europe. I also visited a whole bunch of other communities like the Honiquin family in Japan, Pachamama in Costa Rica, Inanita in Nicaragua, a sanctuary in Guatemala, a whole lot of other different places all around the world. And really it was like what I guess reality wanted to bring into my space was, what are the alternative ways of how we can live on the planet together? And so the transition point for me was, instead of it being individualistically focused around helping individuals awaken, helping people sort of catalyze their life and move into a direction of what their soul destiny, it was looking at it from a community perspective. How can we as a community move into a reality or into a timeline where we're working together, when we're in co-creation? What would it look like when people are tapped in, tuned in, plugged in, and receptacles to source intelligence to create society in a different way? Because I became so aware of my visitations to cities all across the planet. There wasn't any one city, and what I was shown was just the dysfunction, and the environment was not conducive for people being heart-centered, for people being able to even have care and compassion for themselves and others, because of the incredible stresses that people are faced with. Not a lot of time, and I've got to take care of my family, I've got to earn money, I've got to got my social commitments, I've got all these hobbies. It's almost like there's just no time for anything else. And it doesn't surprise me that there isn't space for compassion and community support and helping one another, because it's the environment isn't conducive for that. People are under so much stress and pressure because everyone feels like you've got to be responsible for everything in your own life. Right. And so what these new communities were teaching me is like, the way that you're living on the planet now in these cities, hasn't been the way for a long time. You know, all the indigenous cultures, they lived in a way where there was plenty of time and space for spiritual growth and development. There was plenty of time for cultural, art, theatrical or self-expressive ways, storytelling, dancing, you know, bringing different communities together to have different rituals and ceremonies. And of course, having the responsibilities of, you know, making sure that there's enough resources and food and whatever it is.
Sharing the responsibilities of survival. Like, I have to make enough money to put a food in my mouth and pay my bills and pay the rent. Like, I'm responsible for my survival. And so I've got no time for anything else. But if we're sharing those responsibilities, you can relax.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, raising children, it's like how stressful and how intense is that these days? Like, instead of going, well, the community is responsible for raising the children.
Right.
And actually in most indigenous cultures, the parents weren't the ones that raised the kids. It was actually the grandparents. It was the older people, because they had more wisdom, they had more experience, they also had more compassion.
Yeah.
And you know, grandparents generally are, you know, they love being with the kids, but the parents are, you know, thinking of a million and one things and often don't have time to be with the kids in the way that the kids would love. And I kind of like, I've got 10 minutes, right, you know, and then I'm out of here. Sort yourself out, watch television, play your computer games, you know, don't bother me.
So as you visited these communities, were they working effectively? Like, were people happy, and was it sort of bipping along smoothly, or was it a little bit, or, you know, what did you experience?
My honest experience is that all of these communities had some amazing parts to them, things that were like, this is amazing. And then there was dysfunction. There were things that I was like, this is not, you know, from my perspective, the most aligned or the most, you know, powerful way of being together. But I also recognize that it was a reflection of just where we are as a collective as well. It's like we're in a transition. It's like it's not all clear. There's also so much shadow integration work going on. There's a lot of collective healing work going on between the masculine, between the feminine, like so many things. So I also just saw that as going, these communities are also just going through the process of they've signed up for the experience of, I'm not going to participate in the mainstream way. I'm going to explore reality in a different way. But I'm also recognizing it's not necessarily all going to be smooth sailing, you know, and easeful, because there is going to be stuff that is coming up for them. And they all had different flavors as well. They all had different reasons for existing. They all had different kind of focal points or purposes that were driving them, are all different. So that was fascinating.
Different
ideologies.
You know, I think about, you know, you see movies that, like the Amish communities and those sorts of communities where people leave the mainstream world to create their own community based on rules and regulations and principles that they cherish, like being with nature and being more, and they create all these rules and regulations, and it's so often gone so badly wrong. So often. And even well-meaning people that get together in community here that try to do the same thing. I spoke to a young girl a few years ago that said that she visited a lot of communities in the country, north, and sustainable farming communities, and, you know, they have these great ideas and principles, but then egos get in the way, and you know, this is the way it should be done. No, this is the way it should be done, and people are arguing, and it all disbands. My daughter was even a part of that, you know, in a community for a while, and this young guy wanted to get this community happening, but he had his way. It was his way or the highway, and people came in and he couldn't listen to other people's points of view, so they didn't stay. It's just so interesting what you say, Nicolas, about we have to do the consciousness work first, really. In order to really live in alignment, in community, in alignment with principles that are the benefit of all.
Well, that's the thing, you know, like, unfortunately, and it's spot on, some people, they receive the vision or they get an impulse of wanting to live in community, but then some of the old ways within themselves, they haven't integrated yet. So they bring that, you know, into the new creation. And unless you're going to be radically honest and go, this process or this journey of me creating a new community, part of it is going to be us as a group collective transforming the old. And, that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit messy, and it's not going to be perfect. And being aware that I don't have all the answers and I can't do this on my own. But yeah, the control aspect, the people often, the people that have the initial vision, really want to hold on to it, want to hold on to the way that they think is the way, and can, unfortunately, can kill it, because other people that step in feel like their input, their download or their receiving isn't considered on par. So unfortunately, then the only two things that can happen, one is it just doesn't work, or you manifest a situation where it becomes a pyramid, where you've got kind of like a leader, a guru, the decision maker at the top, and then you've got the subordinates or the people underneath that basically just implement what that person wants.
Right, which has been the way our society has been structured, really, hasn't it? And
exactly.
And people are rebelling against it now. Like, there are people in power that are making decisions in a so-called democracy where we're all supposed to be a part of those decisions, but we're not. And those decisions are greatly affecting the way we live our lives and the way we can do business and survive. And we have no say in it. There's no democracy in the decisions being made right now. So it's all up for discussion at the moment, isn't it? It's all up for transition. It's all up for review. Let's say that. Is this the best way that we can live as a society with the current status quo that we've got going on with this sort of pyramid-like government thing? Ooh,
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the the second part of the overseas journey that I was doing was going to the different sacred sites. And, what I realized was, it's like we need to go to our ancient past, the wisdom of the ancients, to connect with that ancient wisdom and connect it into the future and allow that wisdom to also guide us. So it's not, about going back into prehistoric ways of living, but it's about looking at some of the underlying principles or the ways of how those societies function and some of the wisdoms and truths and frequencies that they were connecting with, and bring that into this world and allow that to help transform some of the elements that are not working for us anymore.
Yeah. So did you have any extraordinary experiences at any of these sacred sites? Talk to any spirit guides or see any ancient visions, or what was going on?
Yeah, look, I mean, I went to quite a few, like, for example, like I did an amazing pilgrimage in Egypt. We were very blessed to connect with the Sphinx and go into the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, and, really do a lot of work in many of the temples and connect to some of the energies. So some of the statues that exist within those temples are still activated. They still have, being like you can still connect to the energies that were embedded in those statues from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. So there was all sorts of incredible experiences, in those temples. I feel, for me, like, if I just had to kind of summarize it, it was like, by engaging with these different sacred sites, it was like more parts of me got turned on, and more memories opened up to, let's say, the greater journey as a being that I've been on. So, for example, it's like I've been reading two books that really grabbed my attention recently. Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus, and talks about, kind of an 800-year period, sort of 600 years before, 200 years after, and the greater kind of, what unfolded. And what blew my mind was that a lot of the places, the physical places that she was talking about in southern France, in Avalon, in Fordingale in Scotland, in Mona in northwestern Wales, also, the places in India, Egypt, Middle East, and in Turkey were some of those places, or many of them, I've been to. I visited, I was there. So sometimes it's like I go into the experience of going into these sacred sites, recognizing that something significant is present for me, but not necessarily always being completely aware of what does this actually mean, what is actually igniting in me. So what I became really aware of through these books was that the Essene way of living right? The community way of living where you're in service to everyone's spiritual development and growth.
Okay, we froze for a bit. So you were saying you were in these places and you had some memories of living in the Essene community, like some past life memories. What were those memories?
Yeah. So, for example, there was different communities like at Qumran, Mount Carmel, Bucharest in southern France, and then also in Avalon as well as two different communities in Wales. And yeah, I was drawn to these different places for different reasons during my travels, and just often felt a very strong resonance, or felt, gosh, there's something really powerful here. There's something for me. There's something in me that is igniting and enlivening, but often not having the full awareness or the full understanding of what that actually translates or what it actually means. But going there, it was like it ignited, it opened something up in me. And I think that was a large part of what these travels were. It was almost like keys that were opening different portals of consciousness for me, which will still be translating, will still be revealing themselves in the years to come.
Yeah.
I still feel it's an unfolding process. Even though I've come back to Australia, I'm grounding in and really allowing the next cycle to really allow itself to reveal itself to me.
Yeah.
I still feel a connection to all of what has happened.
So the Essenes, do you know much about the Essenes? Like, do you know what their vision and purpose were? We used to speak about it in the Academy of Light. They're basically a group of people that sort of protected sacred knowledge that was being suppressed at the time by governments and churches, weren't they? And they sort of protected sacred spiritual knowledge or something like that. What's your remembrance or understanding of the Essenes and their way of life and who they were and what they did?
Yeah, so they were, you can call them, the mystics, and they were beings that, explored the deep revelations of the mysteries of life and reality, and the full alignment to God's source divinity, and supporting one another, supporting each other, but then also doing a lot of anchoring in of those higher frequencies into the grids and doing a lot of preparation work. At the time, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, humanity wasn't really ready for a lot of that work. So for example, in the book that I read, they talk about some of the actual alchemical processes of how they would be able to live for hundreds of years, 5, 6, 7, 800 years, and be able to consciously pass over. And so there was a lot more conscious awareness of how to live life and actually be in union of this physical plane, but also recognize that there's so much more going on beyond this physical plane. And so they had a lot of initiations that they did. And yes, obviously they were keepers of the sacred knowledge, and their doors weren't closed, but they allowed synchronicity to allow those people to come to them who needed to come to them. But they certainly weren't marketing themselves or out there trying to get people to join them. It was very much, if it was your soul destiny to be there, you found them. They weren't out there trying to find people. But it was fascinating. Like, I guess they were grounding in, holding and nurturing and safeguarding the frequencies, the knowledge, the wisdom for future times, which I believe is now.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting that as we fell into more ignorance on this human plane, in this physical plane, the wisdom was always still available and in the minds of a select group of people, or just still physically available. It wasn't, it wasn't like you had to connect to your spirit guides or galactic family in order to receive the wisdom or talk to God or the angels. It was still physically available in the minds of a certain group of people, or written in books, or still available, even though it seemingly was lost, and new protocols were introduced that were supposedly guiding humanity in their human evolution. And so, it's fascinating, isn't it? How and that was passed down through generations. This knowledge was always there and always available for those who wanted to find it, who sought after it. Yeah. So I suppose, what do you think the role in the Essenes is today, as we reawaken to sacred knowledge of who we are as infinite creative potential and our power of, creation and manifestation.
My sense is that, the people that were connected to those lineages in the past are remembering the roles that they played as teachers, as guides, as beings of holding that sacred knowledge. And of course, that those memories are in the being's field. It's there, obviously not necessarily always fully remembered, but in a sense, they're like these beacons that are all around the world. I think, the place all across the planet, and just emanating the frequencies, the knowledge, the wisdom, the potency and the potential of awakening, so that more and more people who are now much more receptive to living life in a different way. And I guess as you mentioned, the ignorance of those times, was so heavy, and the dogmas and the indoctrinations and the level of fear and darkness was really strong. And of course, at that time, people were killed. Like if you held information that was considered heretical or just considered to be a different perspective, people were killed for that. So that's how radically different those times were. And now, obviously, that's not the case anymore. And it's probably more a case of transforming the shadows, the resistances and the fears, and allowing ourselves to be available to those that are ready to receive it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that people were killed in those days for information that could possibly expand human consciousness and evolve human societies. And yet that has still been going on. People that have brought through free energy devices and technologies that could evolve this world outside of the current political and social economic state that we're in. And those people who benefit from the current political and social economic state don't want that change, and have knocked these, like wiped them off the face of the earth. There's a lot of evidence that has happened, like over and over again in the not too distant past, and maybe still be going on. So in many ways we think we've evolved, but have we really? There's still a lot of work to do, isn't there, Nick?
There is.
There's still a lot of work.
We're still in the beginning phase, really. We're still this new era that we're moving into. We're still in transition. There is still a lot of work to do, and really, in order for the new ways and the new, let's say, methods or manifestations of society to really blossom, it's like the inner work of each individual. We've just got to continue to commit to that.
Yeah. As you speak about past lives, Michael tomorrow and I spoke about past life and karma, past lives and karma. And he was the only teacher that I'd heard speak about karma in the way my guides have been speaking about it, is that karma is a continuation of desire, of unfulfilled desire. So I've seen that in my own personal life, as I saw my mother die when I was a child and then reincarnate, and seen her fulfill unfulfilled desires. I've seen two lives. She's experienced, in my one life, I've seen these two lives, this continuity of living, which has been fascinating for me. But it would be the same with that, what we didn't fulfill in that life, we've come back to fulfill in this life. There's this continuation of like intention and desire, like I wanted this to happen, maybe it didn't happen, maybe I was hung as a heretic or burnt at the stake as a witch, but I had a desire to uplift, empower and teach, and we're kind of continuing that fulfillment, really, aren't we, in many ways?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. I mean, connected to my travels overseas, I know when I've tapped into some of the past experiences that I've had, like I've experienced at a being level, a lot of limitations and restrictions, and there's been such a desire for freedom in this life. So I felt that part of the travel was just, not to worry about family, other people's stuff, other people's, responsibilities, and to really be able to flow and live in just intuitive, dynamic, receptive, receiving and then moving. And I could really feel like some part of me was just like, yes, I really wanted to experience that, which wasn't possible in some other time. So I do resonate. Yeah, definitely.
And often that unfulfilled desire drives us and we don't exactly understand what that is, but we're being driven by it. And it's nice to have a little bit more awareness of what that is, like do a past life regression or go into meditation, talk to your spirit guides or whatever. But yeah, it's great to have an understanding of what's driving us in this lifetime, fulfilling an unfulfilled desire. Oh, righty. So that was fascinating. And in all that you experienced overseas, the visions and the past lives and the places and the communities, what did you bring back to Australia? Like, what do you want to implement here? How do you want to use that you've learnt as you continue as a teacher, expanding consciousness here in Australia?
I mean, to be completely honest, it's definitely still unfolding for me.
Percolating.
So it still is, because it's fascinating that since I got back, it's been about 9 months, which is the time that a baby, is made.
Yeah.
And it feels like I've come back to Australia. There's been a simulation, a ground, and it's only kind of probably the last 2 months where I'm feeling, I can feel within me, it's like it's the same impulse, that same sense, like back in 2010, back in 2017, of stepping into the mystery and going, okay, everything that has been, everything that has come into my life, how is this going to now translate moving forward? I mean, some of the key elements that I am aware of that is clear for me, co-creation is really important. Circular leadership, is important. Working with others in a way where each person is seen as a sovereign, capable, magnificent individual, and working together more on a horizontal plane of existence rather than it being vertical, and people taking responsibility and working with whatever aspect of the creation they're going to work on, and then coming back and then piecing it together and weaving it together and then looking at the next reiteration. That feels important. Like being in team, in an organization, working with others for a vision or a collective directive that is just beyond myself feels quite strong at the moment. So the work that I've been doing up to this point, a lot of it has been solo. I mean, I have certainly done co-creations with other people, and it's been incredibly joyful. I love working with other people. I enjoy looking at all the different gifts, abilities, the ways of how people orientate themselves, and be in that receptive space to then go, cool, what way works? What are the dynamics in the space with these people at this time, and how can we create something in harmony and balance and in flow that honors everyone?
That honors everyone.
That honors everyone, and that's really strong for me at this present time.
Yeah.
So the manifestation or what that actually looks like, it hasn't fully landed at this point.
Yeah. When we were chatting on the Vision Keepers the other night, a couple of the people were sharing their ties to Israel and what's happening over there with the bombings, the missiles, and they were quite upset about it. People have got family over there, and many of them have been great peacemakers in this land, and yet they're seeing their homeland bombed. And it just reminded me when I put on Peace Day all those years ago, that the saying that really touched me during that time, that really drove me during that time, was that the people that want to organize, the people that want to, stand up for peace, need to be as organized as the people that create war. So when you think about creating war, there is huge organization and strategy involved in that, right? It's huge. Think about the military. Think about it. And the people that want to create peace on this world need to be as organized as the ones that are creating war. And I thought, and that means coming together and working together, for a common goal, just like you've been talking about the whole time. Yeah, being in collaboration and not competition. And it's not about me and what I've got to teach. It's about us collectively together. What can we achieve? Yeah, I think that's been
Absolutely. And it's just to honor that everyone does have something to offer. And often it's just about holding an environment or a space that allows those gifts to come out.
Yeah.
And then weaving them together. And that's something I really enjoy, really resonate with. And I really feel, part of the community aspect for me is how can we come together and move away from that overly individualistic way of living to alleviate some of the stresses and some of the problems that are caused directly from that way of living,
right,
and be more in a co-creative way. And from that place, that physical manifestation will then kind of permeate into the collective and more people. I mean, look, there's so many people that, for me, like when I'm just connecting out into the world, that people are definitely feeling the pulse of community coming together. There's a different way. How can I contribute? Those questions are certainly permeating the collective, and people are in that inquiry. And look, we're still in transition, so it isn't super clear. And I think people are sort of finding, who's my tribe? Who are my people? Who do I want to work with or collaborate with? So it feels like it's like the pieces on the puzzle are all moving to where they need to be. It kind of feels a little bit like that.
I think we hold so firmly to our individual identities, like to be an individual, to be separate, to be different to everybody else. And there is a fear that if we move into a more collective mindset or way of being, that we'll lose some of that individualization. I just think about ET societies that are collectively driven, and they have telepathy and a hive mind, and they can all think of the same thing at once, and they're more connected and unified. And many of those societies, they all look the same too. So that individualization has been stripped away, and humans are so individualized. We look, everyone looks different, and we think differently, and we're all so different. So there's that sort of juggling point of, can we maintain a sense of individualization and feel one as well, feel, in community. It's interesting times, isn't it?
Interesting times.
As we play with this. Oh, it's been so beautiful, Honeyone. Any last things you'd like to share with our audience about who you are, what you're doing, what you teach, before we say goodbye?
Yeah, sure. So as I allow this beautiful transition to unfold, I feel that there is a new reiteration or an unfoldment in life, which is normal. We go through these cycles of birth and death, and then we recreate and do it all over again. But at this time, I'm still very much excited to support people in being a guide, to support them to really connect into their higher self, to connect in to their own innate wisdom and intelligence, and to create a life that reflects those higher ideals. So, working with energy, with alchemy, and really learning all the different tools. Like, I feel that we're in a time of self-mastery. So it's really just to learn what is it that I need to know to feel comfortable with all of this craziness that's going on in the world. To be a conscious creator, to be also in co-creation with life, to be able to receive the intuitive messages that are for me to receive and then to act upon, and just to become more masterful in the energetic, non-manifest realms, and of course be a leader in your own way, whatever that is. Be the leader of your own life, really, in sharing your gifts, talents, and abilities. So, that's still very much true for me, and still very much in alignment. So I support people in that way, and of course, I feel that as more people are aligning to who they truly are, then let's say the collective vision of a more loving, harmonious, compassionate society does become, the probabilities go into our favor.
Yeah. So how do you support people? You do private sessions? You do?
I create journeys. So every single journey is unique. They last anywhere from about 3 to 6 months. I usually sit with someone and just really kind of tune in and ask, a lot of questions, and then basically create something that is unique to them. So every single journey is unique. Every process is different. There is no kind of cookie cutter approach. And so it's intuitively led, but there is a structure that holds us. But it's a one-on-one journey, one-on-one process.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, thanks so much for sharing all your wisdom and your journeys with us on ATP Media. It's been beautiful. And I look forward to your talk at the Higher Self Expo. It sounds like quite an experience that you'll be guiding us through. Sounds like fun. Because as I said, I did Nicholas's workshop. He did it with a couple of beautiful, with Imbal and Etty, some beautiful healing women. And it was so much fun. And you're such a magnificent teacher. You really are, of all this quantum alchemy and healing energy. And you're really great.
I'm very excited to be sharing the experience with people at the Higher Self Expo coming up in July. It'll be amazing. And thanks so much, Karen, for holding space for us today, and for all the many different shows that you've done over a long time, and your pulse into the collective to support people to live a more compassionate, loving, accentuatedly positive way of being, right?
Thanks, honeyone. It was wonderful to have Nicolas on the show again. He's such a magnificent teacher and healer, really. I've known him for years now. I met him through a collaboration I was doing with somebody else who was putting on some events here in Sydney, and I thought, let me check out this young man. I want to know more about him. And I went to one of his talks up the road from me. He was doing some teaching, and found out more about him, and we became instant friends. It's definitely a past life connection. Actually, as I tuned into him, I was telling my online tribe when he came and spoke to us, that first time I went to sort of check out his teachings and everything, as I tuned into him, I saw him in a future life in another planet, as this magnificent being. It was sort of like a female essence, and behind this being, I saw this magnificent city that was like in this future world. I don't know if it was Earth or another planet. Anyway, it seemed familiar to me. I thought, maybe I live there too. So we probably know each other from the future more than the past. But we spoke about the Essenes today. I think we probably met there as well, being an Essene. It's fascinating, the Essenes. A lot of people talk about our history and the Essene, what the Essenes were, these different societies that were the protectors of spiritual knowledge and wisdom as we fell into darkness, some people call it, or less awareness of who we are as an extension of the source. And now, of course, the conscious community speaks about it, that we're remembering our latent, potent powers of creation, how powerful our thoughts are. We've been bipping along in this world for so many thousands of years, not understanding that our thoughts and our frequency and our feelings have potent effects on the physical manifestation of this world. And we're starting to remember this and get more deliberate in how we flow our energy, how we think, how we feel, what we intend, where we put our focus and attention. It's big teachings. Personally, I want to see it taught in every school. I want to see universities of consciousness evolution. I see a world where this education of how we remember who we are and how we direct our streams of consciousness, our focus, is the biggest education that we have. For history's fine, geography's fine, maths, all that sort of stuff is great, but we're not taught how to direct our thoughts. We're taught to sort of look out into the world and get battered around by, oh, the war is terrible, oh, that's terrible. And we feel and think according to what is presented to us, instead of being deliberate in what we choose to think and where we put our powerful focus and how we flow our energy. This was all taught in the mystery schools thousands of years ago, in the ancient mystery schools in Egypt. And this was the knowledge that was protected by the Essenes, even when they were burning witches and burning people for being heretics. And and it's resurfacing today. And I'm sure the people that are listening to this show and my shows are the teachers of it, are the people that are carrying that ancient wisdom future wisdom, ancient wisdom. You know, time is more of a circular thing than a linear thing like we experience here on planet Earth, and what goes around comes around, right? We're going through these cyclical stages, and it's all coming back. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And maybe we made commitments in past lives to return the knowledge, and that's what we're doing as we hold the knowledge in ourselves. And even as we just remember for us, our own personal growth, that we are psychic and we are powerful and we can travel anywhere. What did Einstein say? Logic will take you so far, imagination will take you anywhere. You can, astral travel and fly through the universe, and you don't need to take your body with you. You can just use your consciousness. I've had people on the show. Kevin Briggs is someone I had on the show. I've asked him to come back this year, probably towards the end of the year, who from birth, when he was a kid in the bath, he had his galactic guides show up. And then at 9, he had some activation that allowed him to have full conscious awareness of his powers of consciousness. So he could astral travel at will, leave his body at will, project his consciousness. He just had all this ability, and nobody else around him seemed to. So he didn't talk about it with anyone, but he had it all online. It was all online. He said that he'd walked to the end of the gate in his house when he was a kid, and he had 2 bus stops that he could go to for school. And he'd just project his consciousness and have a look at the bus stops and see which was the most crowded, and he'd go to the one that was less crowded so that he'd get on the bus. And then I think he said that when he was on the bus one day, he just left his body and he was flying behind the bus, the school bus, and sort of looking around at his astral body flying. And then when he needed to get back in his body, jumped back in his body and went to school. Just love this. It's just fabulous. But it's all available to all of us through remembering these ancient wisdom teachings or these futuristic wisdom teachings. And, the ETs are reminding us, the angels are reminding us, our higher self are reminding us. It's all happening. I've got the cat here being very sweet. He's been very busy this morning, jumping around as I talk to Nick. Anyway, fun times. And remember to tune into the Higher Self Expo. I was just having a chat with Zane. We're just getting all the speakers organised now. I think we've got them, all the ones that can come and talk, booked in. It's going to be an exciting expo. It's going to be really fun. And Nicolas is one of our speakers. He might even be a co-host. We don't know. He's thinking about it because David, who was going to co-host with me, has work commitments. So I'm looking for a new co-host, an Australian, preferably male. Doesn't have to be male. But Nicolas is having a think about it, so he might be one of our co-hosts. Or not. I don't know. Wait and see. Big love to you all. And this week, I've spoken about it many times, Garnet is our guest teacher in the Inner Sanctum in a couple of days. It's going to be very exciting. I just love Garnet. He is just awesome. He's had amazing experiences too. He doesn't know how to leave his body at will. He does. He flies around the universe in his astral body and experiences amazing things. But he does it because his spirit guide comes and collects him. And so he's sort of under the tutelage of his spirit guide. I've never asked him if he could do it at will. I will this week in the Inner Sanctum. And I'm on every week talking about all this stuff, revealing this ancient wisdom, powers of creation, deliberate creation, how to focus your mind in a way that benefits you and the rest of humanity and enables you to manifest the life that you want. Yeah, how to be a potent power and force and source in this world. And remember to get to the book, Awakened by Death. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.